Hey guys, and welcome to another really fun Scrabble endgame that arose in a recent tournament game played between Morris Greenberg and Libero Paolella. Now, in this position, it seems on first glance that Morris should be firmly in command. He's up 28 points, he's got both blanks, and it's his turn. However, as we'll see in this video, there's actually a lot of danger that he needs to watch out for here. Now, if we look on the right-hand side of my screen, we'll see that there are 9 unseen tiles, which means there are 7 on Libero's rack and 2 still in the bag. And the unseen tiles are pretty promising for bingos, right? We've got E, I, N, R, S, T, a couple of O's, and the K is actually not that bad for bingoing, since there's a lot of stuff like Stinker that Morris will need to watch out for, and the K is also, as we'll see, a very dangerous scoring tile. So a very potent pool of unseen tiles, and there is a good place to bingo here, and that is column N, because there are a lot of words that will fit over here, such as stinker or stonier, making BIS and RET, and there are actually a few words as well that'll fit even further up, making even more overlaps right here, making tons. Sootier or stonier would both fit over there, making go, bit or bin, and REI. So a lot of potential bingos that Morris needs to watch out for here. Now, it's worth mentioning before we dive any deeper into the analysis that Morris does not have any playable bingos here. If Morris could bingo himself in that spot, then he would simply do that, and then the game would pretty much just be over there, and I don't think I'd be making a video out of it because it wouldn't be very interesting. However, as we see, Morris cannot bingo there himself, and he can score a lot of points with something like Vivat or maybe Viator over here. And this looks okay at first, but the problem, of course, is that Libero can simply bingo with revs on his next turn if he has the right rack. So for instance, if Libero has en routes, then he's going to simply bingo with en routes and revs, and after picking up the K from Morris's rack, he's going to win pretty easily. There's many other bingos like Orients and Re-Knots and a few other things that Libero could have there too. So Viator or any similar play with the V would actually be a pretty sizable mistake for Morris in this position. So now that we know that Morris can't bingo and he can't really try to just score enough points to outrun a potential out-bingo, he needs to be a little bit more creative if he wants to try to guarantee himself a win. And the play Morris made is it's actually not the correct play, but it is very creative in its own right. So it's worth spending a minute or two just demonstrating what actually happened in the game. In the game, Morris played win over here for 9 points. And there are several important ideas with this play. The most important idea is that Morris is only playing 1 tile, so he's not emptying the bag. After this play, there is still a tile in the bag, so that if Libero bingos, Morris will still have another play in the endgame and hopefully be able to score enough points to outrun. Now, there's also 2 more ideas that are directly related to the idea of leaving 1 in the bag that Morris thought of and capitalized on with this play. And they both center around this K tile. The K is a key tile because it's a very good scoring tile, so it could either be useful for Morris to score with, or as on the flip side, it could actually be damaging for Libero because it could make his rack difficult to bingo with or difficult to play at all. And that's actually exactly one of the ideas Morris had here with this play. You'll notice that on this board, there's actually only a single spot to play off a single K. And that is right here, making OK and KAE. And Morris blocks that spot with his play of win. So if Libero bingos immediately in this position and draws the K, he's actually going to be stuck with the K, which is not something you see very often, especially now that OK is a valid 2. But it does happen every so often, and here it is very relevant, as we'll see. So that's a very clever idea, hoping that maybe Libero picks up the K and gets stuck with it. And on the flip side, Morris is also figuring that if he himself draws the K, he'll hopefully be able to score enough points with the K to counteract any bingo Libero might get down. And this is actually what happens. So in this position, Libero has Sootier on his rack, and he actually makes a key mistake. There are 2 places to play Sootier, both on column N, and he chooses the lower scoring one over here for 72 points, presumably missing that he could slot it 1 spot further up for 8 more points. Now, what actually happened in the game was that Morris had this rack. He played crates over here for 57 and was able to win after Libero went out by a score of 378 to 367. So this is what actually took place in the game. And it's worth noting that if Libero had played Sootier over here, then Morris would not have been able to win. It turns out his best play is Kotz over here, which still scores quite a lot. It scores 48 points, but it doesn't score quite as many as Crates, so between that and the fact that this Sootier scores a lot more, Libero will be able to win by 8 points after he simply plays out over here. So in this case, the K would have been useful for Morris, but not quite useful enough. It is worth quickly mentioning, though, that Morris's other idea of potentially sticking Libero with the K could have come in handy had Morris drawn the N. Because in this case, Libero's only spot for his K, even after the better placement of Sootier, would have been okay from the first O in Sootier, and Morris can simply just play something like Gore over here, and now Libero doesn't have any spots for his K. So it's very easy to see now that Morris can simply play off a couple tiles at a time and win this game very easily. A very simple way of doing that would actually just be to play Rain on his next turn, dropping the N, and then going out with Tiffs and Stave. That's most likely not the optimal sequence, but it's more than enough to win. But I'll leave it as an exercise to the viewers to try to figure out what Morris's optimal sequence might be in this position. But in any case, this is what actually happened in the game. So as we saw, though, win is a good play, but it certainly doesn't win 100% because in the actual position that happened, if Libero had played the other placement of Sootier, then Morris would have lost the game. So with that in mind, let's think about what other approaches Morris might take to try to guarantee a victory in this position, which is indeed possible. So one other thing that Morris could think about is trying to directly block Libero from bingoing over here on the right while scoring a lot of points. And one way he could do that is maybe Vista over here. Of course, it doesn't score nearly as much as plays with Rev, but it doesn't give back that S-hook. The problem with Vista is it goes up by 49, but if Libero has the right tiles, he's still going to be able to score a lot of points with plays hooking Tiffs and starting with SK. So one instance where Libero will be able to win after Vista is if his rack is, I believe this is one of the racks that's problematic. If Libero has this rack, then he plays Skint and Tiffs, and now, despite having a blank, Morris actually can't play out in this position, and his best play is just to play Rep over here for 12, and after Libero goes out in the corner, he's going to win by 6 points. So Vista is a good idea in general, trying to score a decent amount of points and block this spot, but unfortunately it falls in some cases to big plays hooking Tiff. And this kind of leaves Morris in a conundrum because it's not easy to block plays hooking Tiff and also block bingos on the right. One idea would be trying to play from the F, but the problem is if Morris plays from the F, this actually doesn't block all of Libero's bingos on the N column, because as we mentioned, Sootier and Stonier play over here, and those will still fit. There'll be one square of extra leeway between the last tile and that bingo and whatever tile Morris places on this double word score. So it will just barely still fit. So with that in mind, there's actually really only one spot that Morris can play that blocks both threats, that blocks both Tiffs as well as column N bingos. And that spot is over here on column M, hooking its. So Morris would have to use one of his blanks and make a play there. And it turns out that one play there, I won't spoil which one yet, is the only one that wins 100% of the time. But before I dive into those plays, I do want to address one other potentially promising strategical possibility for Morris here, which is actually totally counter to this whole idea of trying to block Libero's bingos and scoring plays. And it's an idea that's very important when you've got a strong rack like this, since sometimes you are best off, as it will turn out here, just playing defense, but sometimes you're actually best off trying to open even more so that there's multiple lines on the board, with the idea of hoping that if your opponent bingos in one spot, you can bingo out in the other spot and win the game. That can actually often be a better idea than trying to play defense. In this case, Morris has a few ways he could try to do that, and they all involve playing off one tile over here on the left-hand side of the board to try to open another line. Of course, if Morris plays off 2 or more tiles, then Libero can simply bingo out here if he has the right tiles and win, so that isn't really a consideration. So something like TI might be an option here, but the problem is if Morris picks up the K, he's not threatening any bingos because AKRTV double blank doesn't have any 7s. So in this case, if Libero just bingos on the right with Sootier as he did, or Stonier or anything there, then Morris is not going to be able to score enough, and Libero will win that game pretty comfortably. It turns out the one idea Morris has that is worth looking at more closely is RE over here. And this is actually, as it turns out, tantalizingly close to winning 100% of the time. It turns out there is one specific situation where it neither wins or loses. As we'll see, it happens to result in a tie. But it requires extremely precise play from Libero to realize why. So the idea with RE is that if Morris draws the K, he'll be threatening to play Akvavit, AKVAVIT, over here on column B, hooking an A to make R. So this is why RE is a viable fish, because it actually does draw a bingo with the K. And pretty much all of the other tiles will result in bingos in both of the spots. For instance, if he picks up an E or an O, he's going to have Obviate for quite a lot of points, hooking GO, Bib, and Rev on the N column, and it'll also play on column B. An I or an N will give him Invital in both spots, and a T would give him something like Vitiate on column B, and there's several things it'll give him on the right too, the coolest one being a Tavist, ATAVIST over here, making 4 overlaps with Tuna, GI, BIS, and RET. The S gives him the same thing on the right, and many bingos on the left. The other possibility that's worth looking at is if Morris picks up the other R, because in that case, as we see here, Morris would not be threatening a bingo on the right-hand side. So let's actually quickly look at that possibility first. So if Morris draws the other R, then he's fine, because we know then Libero will have 7 of these tiles. This isn't Libero's full rack, but we know he's going to have 7 of these tiles. And if that's the case, then Libero is actually not threatening any potential bingos on the left. The only 7s in this rack are Tunis and Isotone, so if Libero doesn't have the K, and neither of them fit on the left-hand side of the board. So there really is nothing for Morris to worry about if he draws the R, since there's also nothing Libero can fish for on the left, because as we said, there's no 7s if he draws a K, so he's not going to get anything if he tries to fish off one tile and try to block at the same time. And if he tries to fish off his K elsewhere on the board, then Morris will simply just bingo out. So in this position, regardless of what Libero has, it really doesn't matter. There's nothing he's going to be able to do that will pose a problem for Morris, and Morris is just going to bingo out here on the next turn. If somehow Libero is able to block this, which I'm not even sure he can, but if I guess maybe something like Ken over here, depending on what Libero's rack is, he could play. But it's very easy to see that if this happens, Morris can't bingo, but he's just going to now play something with Rev. He can now just play Viator for like 45, and yeah, he'll win very easily in that case. So if Morris picks up the R, he's in good shape, but what happens if he picks up the K? So now we know Libero will have 7 of these 8 tiles, and it's a bit of a different story now, because there are several bingos that Libero could have in both spots. And as crazy as it sounds, what Morris has to worry about here is actually not Libero bingoing immediately, because it's easy to see if Libero bingos immediately on the N column with something like Nitroso, then Morris simply bingos out with Aquavit and wins comfortably. If Libero bingos on the B column with something like Roots, then I guess I should get rid of this I first. If Libero bingos with Roots, then Morris no longer has a spot for Aquavit, and he's down 33 points, but he does have this play of Skive, making Tiffs, which scores 55 points and will be enough to win, because Libero's best outplay would be win an ID here, and Morris still wins by 9. So that's the key idea behind RE, that if Morris draws the K, he's not threatening a bingo in 2 spots, but he is threatening a bingo and a Skive play for 55 points, and Libero can't address both of them. The other possibility here would be Orients or Norites. After Orients, it's actually the same exact thing. I won't go through it in detail, but Morris plays Skive, and then Libro's best out is actually 1 in the same spot as win, so Morris wins by 9 once again, and after Norites, Morris actually can just bingo out with Aquavit making in and TO, so even easier. So it turns out that Libro can actually not win or tie for that matter by bingoing immediately. But what could happen in this position is Libro could realize that this strategy of bingoing immediately is not going to work, and he could realize that if he fishes off one tile in a way that blocks Aquavit and tries to draw a bingo in both spots next turn, he's actually going to be able to get a bit closer. And there's 2 viable ways of doing this. If he plays ERE and draws an I, he'll be hitting Nitroso and Seer, as well as Nitroso on the end column, making Bin and REI. And if he plays TO, he'll be blocking Aquavit and shooting for Norites on column B, which will still play, making No, as well as Stonier on the end column in that spot we mentioned earlier, making tons and several other overlaps. It turns out ERE will fall just short. So in this case, Morris cannot bingo nor block both spots, so his best play would be Skive. And then after Libro bingos out with Torsion or Nitroso, hooking Seer, Morris holds on to win by 1. However, the play of 2 by Libro, an absolutely bizarre-looking play for 2 points, actually results in a tie. As crazy as it sounds, Morris here, all he can do is tie, because Libro is going to be bingoing out. He has Norites on column B, and he has Stonier on column N. Morris cannot play Aquavit, as they would now make AO, which is not a valid 2. So his best play, as before, is just to play Skive, and then sit and watch as Libro bingos out and ties the game. So this is truly crazy stuff. It seems on first glance that RE should be winning pretty much all the time, because if Libro bingos, which is the most logical assumption, then Morris will either just bingo back or play Skive for a lot of points and be able to outrun. However, if Libro realizes that will never win and finds this amazing play of TO, then he will achieve a tie if he picks up one of the eyes. So a truly remarkable position, and it would require absolute genius play on Libro's part to not lose after RE. However, if he does play optimally, then he will be able to tie in this case, and that explains why this fishing play of RE does not quite win 100% of the time for Morris. It never loses, but it does not win if Libro finds TO. So truly incredible stuff there. But let's now go back to where we were earlier when we were talking about the other possible plan for Morris, which is trying to block both column N bingos and row 15 scoring plays for Libero. And we established that Morris is pretty much going to have to play something with its over here burning a blank. And that alone is certainly not dispositive. There's a lot of options he can go for here. If he wants to get rid of his V, he can actually burn his second blank with something like Shiv or Spiv. He can also play Sev. Or he can also consider holding on to one of his blanks with something like Stir or maybe Sri. And it turns out these are all good plays. They all win almost all the time, but only one play wins 100% of the time. Let's first look at what if he wants to get rid of his V. So let's say he plays Shiv. Whoops, sorry, not with 4 blanks. I apologize for that glitch there. I accidentally held down the Shift key. Shiv with 2 blanks. In this case, Boris actually never loses, but as we saw with Re, there are a few specific racks where Libero will, with optimal play, be able to tie. And one such rack is this one right here. And in this case, Libero has a very strong 2-turn sequence, and it involves playing Oven over here through this V. And now Morris can't go out, and Liberos, with his rack of kits, is threatening to go out for a good score in 2 spots. He'd have kits over here under Till, making several overlaps, and he'd also have it over here on the end column, making tons, and a few other overlaps as well for Skit. So Morris can't block both of these, and he can't go out. It turns out his best play would be Roar and Tuna, and then after Libero goes out with kits, the game would end in a tie. So this is one of 2 possible racks where Libero could achieve a tie. The other one is very similar. It's actually the same exact idea. If he has an R instead of an N, then he plays over. And Morris's best play here would be Roan and Tuna. And then by the same sequence, which I won't show in detail, Libero goes out and the game ends in a tie. So these are the only two positions where after Shiv, Libero could potentially get a tie. Otherwise, Morris will be winning. But it certainly is not true that Shiv wins every single time like the best play does. And that best play is not Sev either, because the problem with Sev is it scores a few less than Shiv, and it holds on to an extra tile, so that'll give Libero another 2 points in the endgame, since Morris will have another 1-point tile he'll be caught with after Libero goes out. So the benefit of Sev is it doesn't give back those plays like over or oven on the bottom, but as we'll see, if Libero has the right rack, then Morris will actually lose after Sev. And that rack I'm talking about is this one right here, because Libero has this really nice sequence now starting with Icon, which looks a bit foolhardy at first, giving Morris back that A column to work with, but if we look at his unseen tiles over here, they're pretty clunky, and he actually really doesn't have anything at all through this eye. His best play would be something like Tat over here, and Libero has this really cool out of Dose on the top right, which wins by a single point. So Sev, as we see here, is also not a 100% guaranteed victory. It wins almost all the time, but there are certain situations where it will fall short. So with that in mind, we now know that Morris's 100% winning play cannot involve getting rid of his V. And really, the only possibilities to consider would be Sri or Stir. You could also go for Star over here, but as we'll see when we talk about Stir, we'll see that this doesn't do well because the A is significantly better with the V than the I is. Now let's first go over Sri. And Sri at first looks better because it doesn't put a tile in this triple lane like Star does, which could potentially give back big scoring plays like Chris, K-R-I-S. So after Sri, Morris is once again winning almost every time, but there is one potential sequence Libero could have that will cause problems, and that involves him having a rack of Sooner plus a K. In this case, he has this nice overlap of Sooner over here for 29 points, and he's threatening to go out with his K next turn in this spot that's been haunting us in a lot of this analysis for OK and KAE. And he can't be stuck with the K since he also has this outplay of OK over here. Morris can't score enough by blocking this spot. Twin would lose. So his best play would be Vats over here, simply allowing Libero to go out. And if this happens, Libero will win the game by a single point. So we now see that that's a problem after Sri. And it turns out that it's actually a very similar problem after Star. Because now Morris actually won't even have Vats in that situation, right? After Libero plays Sooner, then Morris really doesn't have anything, right? He doesn't have anything through this R. He doesn't even have Vats. It turns out his best play would be It's over here, but it scores well, but it keeps the V. And after Libero goes out, it turns out he'll actually win by a single point once again. So Star and Sri will net the same exact amount after this Sooner and OK sequence. So we see now pretty quickly that Star is not the best play either. And that pretty much leaves us with only one possibility, which is Stir. And the key difference here is if we once again go back to that same sequence, now Morris once again plays Vats, but the key difference here is that Morris has, with Stir, he's played off an extra tile, he's played off this T, so he'll be losing 2 less points in the endgame, or really Libero will be getting 2 less points from his rack, and he has scored 8 points for Stir instead of 6 points for Sri. So Morris as a whole is netting 4 more points in this sequence, and now instead of losing by 1, Morris will be winning by 3 if Libero follows the same sequence with that rack. So we now see that after Stir, he will be able to withstand this possible sequence with that particular rack Libero might have. Of course, that does not establish that Stir wins 100% of the time. We still would theoretically have to go through all 9 choose 2, which is 36 possibilities that Libero could have. Of course, it's not quite 36 since there are 2 O's, so that reduces the number by a little bit, but it's still quite a lot of different endgames that Morris would theoretically have to go through. However, the key thing to note with Stir is that it does give back the possibility of Kris, K-R-I-S, which scores 39 points, but Morris is now keeping AV blank. And if we think about it, if Libero plays Kris, he'll be playing off the K, the I, and the S, which means Morris will be drawing 2 tiles out of E-N-O-O-R-T. And after Kris, that means that Morris is going to have 5 tiles, including the blank, and he's almost definitely going to be able to just play out to this S over here. And that'll be more than enough to win the game, since it'll be pretty much tied after Stir and Kris. Libero might be up a couple, but after Morris goes out, he'll simply win the game. So that's the key thing to note after Stir. Kris is actually not that big a threat, because it'll just give Morris an outplay in almost all scenarios. So with that in mind, what else could Libero really be threatening after Stir? He could maybe have something like Siren through that R. So like, let's say he has Siren keeping TOO, which is a bit promising because it saves Oot here for a large score to go out. And Siren does still score 29 points, so it brings Libero to within 7. But the thing is here that Morris actually doesn't even have to worry about the K, because he can just score a ton of points with Ova over here, scoring 31, and he's up so many points that after Libero goes out, even though he gets another 10 points for Morris's K, Morris is going to hold on and win quite comfortably, as we can see here. And that's a key benefit of Stir. It guarantees that Morris is going to have Ova next turn, since he keeps VA blank. And there's really nothing Libero can have over there that's going to score effectively. Morris is also threatening a lot of other plays on the bottom, too, if he draws the right tiles. If Morris draws an O, he's threatening Vrow there, V-R-O-W, for 30. If he draws the K, he's threatening Kray, K-R-A-Y, for 39. So this scoring spot actually, ironically, helps Morris more than it helps Libero, because as we saw, Libero's biggest scoring play there of Kris is very counterproductive, as it'll just allow Morris to play out and end the game on the spot. There are like 1 or 2 situations where Libero may be able to play Kris and Morris won't be able to go out. One such one is if Morris draws 2 O's. So if Morris, or if Libero plays Kris keeping T-E-R-N, like this, then Morris wouldn't be able to go out. But as we saw before, he just plays Ova for 33 points, and Libero is not scoring anywhere near enough to catch him, and Morris will win this game easily. So really, between the combination of threatening outplays after Kris and threatening Ova as a backup, even if he draws the K, there's really actually no sequence here that gets Libero close, other than that Sooner followed by OK sequence, which we looked at before, and as we see, it loses by 3 after Stir. So that pretty much concludes it. We've now established that Stir is Morris's best play, and his only play that guarantees a win 100% of the time, regardless of what happens next. So yeah, really crazy position. A lot to think about. I think it's really cool that the idea of RE comes so close to working. It's just cool how you have 2 completely opposing ideas, both of which are extremely important, as we see here, right? The one idea of trying to play defense when you have a lead, and the other idea of trying to open up another line when you have a lead if you have a good rack, so that if your opponent uses one, you can use the other and simply outrun them that way. So both of those come up quite a lot. Sometimes one approach is better than the other. Sometimes both work really well, and as a whole, both do work pretty well here. It just happens that RE in that one specific situation, if Libero finds the play of TO for 2 points, he will be able to tie. So in this case, the defensive strategy does win out, and Stir is the best play. At the same time, you do have to have a lot of confidence to play Stir in your endgame permutation skills, just because theoretically you have to go through so many different possible racks you could pick up and that Libero could have. So it's a very tough position, practically speaking. I think Morris made a very logical play in win. It was a brilliant idea by him to try to K-stick Libero or try to score a lot with the K in the endgame, and it did work out, but there are certainly ways that he could have even more so guaranteed himself a a win. But yeah, once again, of course, really, really tough position with 2 blanks and all this complication. So can't at all fault him for making the play he made. But yeah, there you have it, guys. That's pretty much it for this position. I do hope you enjoyed it. I'd like to thank Morris for posting this game. It's always great to see strong players posting their games and thoughts on cross tables. I highly encourage all viewers, regardless of whether you're a beginner or a advanced tournament player, always go check those out. It's a great way just to pick up some more words, learn some more strategical concepts, and just stay in good tournament shape. So highly recommend checking those games out if you haven't yet. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed watching this video and learned something from it. And I'll be back soon with more of these. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a good one. Bye bye.